concerns that have been raised about the changes to the AP World History exam for the 2019-2020 academic year, my sense is that we should put the agenda on hold, and I'll show it to you so that you can see what we're putting on hold. In fact, Kelly, can we bring that up? So if we were to stick to the agenda, Kelly would introduce the development committee and the ETS staff, and then we would talk about some of the new resources and supports that are becoming available for AP World History, and then provide you with an update on the transition to online distributed scoring. So we can cover those topics if you'd like, but my sense is we should put them on hold for now. And at about 7:45, we can circle back to these, and we can see by show of hands if you'd like to revert to these topics or if you'd like to continue to discuss the course and exam changes. But let's start with those changes just because they've raised significant concerns. So I've received 12 emails from teachers over the past week about this, and 5 emails from students. I've read all 17 of those notes, and I appreciate them. I appreciate the care that the notes have shown. I appreciate the willingness to come to us with concerns. I find that professional, I find that collegial, and I'm grateful for that. In addition, I've tracked the petition on change.org. It currently has about 5,000 signatures. So clearly there are concerns. Let me recap to you the 4 concerns I've heard, because I think the concerns fall into 4 categories. So let me share with you those concerns as I've heard them, so that you can then discern what makes most sense to share tonight. Whether there are augmentations or nuances regarding these concerns, whether you'd like to modify the concerns, rebut the concerns. I know there are a mix of perspectives about this topic, but I'll share with you the 4 concerns as I've heard them, and then I'll stop and we'll open up the floor to your concerns, your complaints, your feedback, your guidance on this issue. I'd like to say that the development committee was not responsible for this decision, so I would be deeply uncomfortable having you attack or critique the development committee or the chief reader for this decision to focus the AP World History exam on periods 4 through 6. This was not the development committee's decision. And I want to be very clear about that. So if you have concerns, I would want you to direct those concerns at me, and I appreciate the chance to engage with you about these. So concern number 1, and this is the concern that I feel must be dismissed for its gross inaccuracy. So I will have no willingness to engage this concern tonight because it is not accurate. And the concern is that the College Board is seeking to increase its financial gain by creating 2 separate courses, a pre-AP World History course and an AP World History course. That is factually inaccurate. Our analysis shows that our revenues will drop as a result of this change, and here's why. If we wanted to increase revenues, we can make a very simple move. It would be to take the 2 college courses that comprise AP World History and create 2 separate AP World History exams, Part 1 and Part 2, as we've done in AP Physics. That would be the revenue play. If that were our goal, that is what we would do, but that will not accomplish the objective that we have, and an objective that I believe is based on a matter of principle about what is best for students. And we may disagree heartily tonight about what we think is best for students, but I ask you to give me and my colleagues the consideration of trusting that we, like you, care about students and that this decision is not financially motivated. It is not, let me tell you why. Pre-AP will result in a slowing down of the rush of students to AP World History and other AP courses. Pre-AP will co-opt and reduce some of the AP exam participation. And as a result of that, the revenues for pre-AP are about $10 per student, as opposed to $94 per student for an AP exam. So we are anticipating, and our Board of Trustees have approved for us, a reduction in our revenues because of this change. The real reason for pre-AP is that only 5% of American students take AP World History before leaving high school. Despite the incredible growth of AP World History, one of the fastest growing of all AP subjects, only 5% of American students take this incredible course that you offer. 95% of American students take another world history class. We have no hope that we can convince all of them and all schools to have all of their world history kids take an AP World History course. It's a college level course. While we would love that because we think rigor is good for everyone, we don't think that's realistic. And we do think there is a real opportunity to improve the standard world history class that most every high school student takes, that 95% of American high school students take, by offering a pre-AP course that gives all those American students a very strong foundation in periods 1 through 3. That is our motivation. We want students to have access to a challenging course, whether it be AP or pre-AP. And ideally, they would have access to both. But that's our motivation for pre-AP, a recognition that AP will not be ubiquitous, whereas world history classes are, and that if we can offer a pre-AP course at a much, much lower cost to schools than AP, that can be a good thing for American education. So I do ask you to recognize that our motives are not financially driven here, that they are motivated by a desire to help students in the same way that you care about helping students. So that's concern number one, that we've heard the College Board is doing this to make more money. That is not accurate. The other three concerns, I think, are valid and worth further discussion. So the second concern that I've heard in these communications is that most schools will simply be unable to offer 2 years of world history. That while 2 states do require 2 years of world history, how incredible and miraculous is that? That's 2 out of 48 states in the District of Columbia. Only 2 states require 2 years of world history. So it is not realistic. As you've pointed out, it is not realistic for any of us to expect that suddenly, miraculously, every school that offers AP World History is going to be able to offer 2 years of world history. Whether the first year be pre-AP or not, it's not realistic to think that this will happen. I do think that will happen in some cases. In some cases, educators will be willing, because of the strength of the pre-AP and the AP brands, to offer 2 years of world history when historically they have offered 1. I wish that would happen everywhere, because I believe this discipline is important enough that it deserves 2 years. I feel strongly about the value of periods 1 through 3. If I were to pick favorite periods, I would pick periods 2 and 3. It's where most of my personal reading occurs. I happen to think that the 8th and 7th centuries are incredibly important to the world we live in now. I think it's rough to think about a world where we aren't having students focus on what happened in those periods, these incredible moments where Byzantine Emperor Heraclius and Khusro II are slugging it out, and disease is ravaging the Near East and paving the way for the global rise of Islam. The world is the way it is today because of decisions people made in those centuries, and I feel strongly about that. I feel strongly about the events in the 8th century related to the sort of amazing story where Abd al-Rahman sort of survives this mass execution of the Umayyad dynasty and makes his way to Iberia and creates this blazon of enlightenment within Cordoba. These incredible events that shape society as we know it today, I lament and worry about. There is a cost to reducing breadth and increasing depth that we should recognize and be concerned about. So we do understand that most schools will not be able to offer 2 years of world history, but AP World History in its current state is the only AP course that combines 2 college courses in one. It's the only AP course where we see this problem of 2 college courses being combined on a single AP exam, requiring teachers and students, typically in 10th grade, to cover 2 college courses as their first AP course, as their first college course. I have concerns about U.S. history is not at all in that same situation. There are many universities that teach that in 1 semester. It's not the same situation. World history is the only AP course where we see this model of 2 separate college courses. And let me finish this point to illustrate that. There's no other AP exam where 2 college courses are covered, but the colleges are only giving credit for 1. 88% of colleges are only giving credit for 1 semester of world history. So by giving an AP exam that covers 2 college courses, but colleges are only giving credit for 1 of those courses, we are doing a disservice to students by requiring them to cover much more content than they will receive credit for. We can see this in teacher satisfaction data. This is one of the least valued courses among AP teachers. We see a 79% rate of teacher dissatisfaction with the current AP World History course. And as we drill down to understand what is the cause of dissatisfaction, the cause is too much content to cover and not enough time. We can see this in the exam results as well. There is no other AP exam that has lower performance on free response questions than the AP World History exam. We can see that despite our desire for for students to learn this material well, they struggle particularly on any free response questions about periods 1 through 3. While I love the idea that some of you have cracked the code and found a way to teach 6,000 years of world history in 9 months, we simply don't see in the exam data in aggregate that students are able to learn the material when that much is required of them, and when colleges are not rewarding or recognizing that. So we had two choices. Because colleges are only giving credit for one college course, and we must align the AP exam to what colleges are giving credit for, we needed to decide, will we align the AP World History exam to periods 1 through 3 or periods 4 through 6? We couldn't find a single college in the country that gave college credit for AP World History solely for periods 1 through 3. We found a number of colleges that give credit solely for periods 4 through 6, and the rest of colleges let the students choose which course to be exempted from, either the first half or the second half of the Civ sequence. So that made our choice a very simple one. If colleges are only giving credit for one semester of College World History, and when they do give credit for one specific component, they're giving credit for modern world history. And we do not want to disrupt current credit policies by saying we're going to have AP World History focus on periods 1 through 3, even though that's not where the colleges are giving credit. So that was the second concern we've heard, and I'd welcome more of your feedback around this, but the concern, again, to recap, is that most schools will not be able to offer 2 years. We understand that. We hope that some of you will be able to advocate for 2 years. We recognize that others of you will need to choose what to focus your course on. For that reason, we've deliberately said very explicitly, we will not be requiring a resubmission of syllabi. We're not requiring a new audit because we want teachers to have the flexibility to choose what content they want to teach in this course. Some of you have states. Now, we've looked at state standards for this as well. We've looked in fast at all 50 state standards, and we can see in the state standards that when they do require, that a number of states only require modern world history. No states only require ancient world history. Other states cover the spread of world history. For states that cover, so this brings up the third concern that I've heard, which is if I exclude materials from periods 1 through 3, I won't be fulfilling my state standards. If I include materials for periods 1 through 3, then I might not be optimally preparing my kids for the AP exam. Right? It's like it's a catch no matter what decision you make. That if you exclude materials from periods 1 through 3, you can't do that because your state standards require you to include them. So of course you should in that case. We won't assess them. We'll be assessing periods 4 through 6, but if your state standards require you to include content from periods 1 through 3, we support you in using your state standards if that course is fulfilling the high school graduation requirement for world history rather than an elective requirement in the state. States have been supportive of the shift to the new pre-AP course. The state of Florida has set in place a policy that any student that takes pre-AP world history will receive GPA bonus points like they do in an AP course or a pre-IB course. The state of Texas has also just reviewed the pre-AP world history course, and TEA will confirm that the pre-AP world history course satisfies Texas's requirements for the world history high school graduation requirement. So there's this concern, though, that if I include material from periods 1 through 3, my students will not be optimally prepared for the exam. I think that's a fair concern because we see that today. When teachers are including, as you all do today, all 6 periods, we see students really tend to struggle on the exam. The performance is very low. So I do think that's a valid concern. If you as teachers choose to continue to include periods 1 through 3, I think we'll continue to see the performance patterns we do. If you feel that your students are performing sublimely well on the exam as it is today, and you feel good about including periods 1 through 3, we support you in continuing to include what you think is appropriate. But we do think you should have flexibility that way. Some of you may choose to only include period 3 as a foundation for what you will teach in periods 4 through 6. Some of you may choose to focus on periods 1 through 3 in the first half of the year, and then focus on the AP exam and periods 4 through 6 in the second half. But we are not deepening or adding to periods 4 through 6 in the curriculum framework to make them more difficult. The point here isn't for us to add more stuff into periods 4 through 6. The point is to give teachers and students much more time to focus on 5 centuries of content all around the world in ways that enable students to develop the historical thinking skills that we see frequently not present in exam performance. So that's concern number 3. If the exam doesn't cover periods 1 through 3, but teachers still choose to focus on periods 1 through 3, there's a concern that students won't be adequately prepared for an exam focused on periods 4 through 6. Again, I think that's a valid concern. It's a concern I think is present in the current state as well. The last concern that I hear is a concern that by starting the course in the 15th century, that the course will be overly focused on European developments, the European hegemony. So I think that's a valid concern as well, because despite the fact that I think that's an outmoded view of world history, we are swimming upstream. We are swimming upstream, as the great Rick Warner would say, in trying to teach those periods without teaching them through the lens of European conquest, because that is how many of us were taught world history, right? We were taught periods 4 through 6 largely through a European lens, and so it is swimming upstream to teach those in a global way. I do not agree that periods 4 through 6 should be taught through a Eurocentric lens. I do not agree with complaints that I think are overstated about the lack of non-European content in those periods. And I look across period 4 and I see the Tokugawa shogunate, I see the Ming Dynasty and the Mongol Empire, the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire. Nope, it's not. I checked right before this conversation. The Mughals are well represented in period 4. Nope. The Mughal Empire is well represented in period 4. Open the course and exam description. The Mughal Empire is well represented in period 4. I quickly corrected myself. The Mughal Empire is well represented in period 4. So I don't agree. I think it is an overstatement and a statement that diminishes my trust in the fair-mindedness of the concern when exaggerated statements are made about the lack of non-European content in periods 4, 5, and 6. That's simply not true. And while the committee themselves, as I said, is not responsible for this decision, there's no way on earth this committee is going to craft exam questions that focus on that focus the course on a European lens for this content. Nothing in my experience with this committee leads me to believe that they will be content with letting this become European History 2.0. That won't happen with this committee. They will insist and they will support and they will help teachers transform the teaching of periods 4 through 6 from the way many of us experience that content. Full stop. So let me stop there. We have 3 microphones, here, and here. You're welcome to line up at the microphones, and at 7:45 I'll do a check as to whether or not you'd like to continue with this discussion or shift to the agenda. You're first.
Hi, my name is Jim Wilson. I teach AP World History, AP Human Geography in Virginia. I like to think myself as pretty hardworking. I have never been sympathetic to teachers who complain about time away from families for grading, for planning, but we all know that when starting a new class or when an AP course is redesigned, we ask our families to make special sacrifices. Late nights, planning homework assignments, essay practices, new tests, new rubrics. Well, a few years ago, we had a big redesign for AP World History, and a bunch of us asked our spouses and our kids just not to see each other in the evenings or to give up summer trips to get ready for that. We saw the shape the test was going to take. A number of us expressed concern, but we were told to trust. To trust the College Board. We expressed our concerns, but then when last year the administration hit, admissions were made, the test was unwieldy. So a revision of the revision was going to happen. A certain amount of moral capital had to be expended for the first redesign, and that moral capital was expended, but nevertheless the promise was made on that stage a year ago that we're going to leave it alone. Now, regardless of who made that pledge, that promise, it falls on us to deal with the consequences of that promise being broken. Now, it wasn't even more than a few months until we got an email saying that we'd listened to teachers and that the LEQ wording was going to be redesigned. They said it's a simple change. this simple change had a profound impact on writing a specific essay to writing any essay. So we went back to the drawing board for essays that I had already spent 2 months teaching, and I had to reteach. But I told my wife and daughter, she'll never be 12 again, that you're not going to see your dad for a little while. We have to go back to the drawing board. But I promised they would never redesign it again, at least another 5-10 years. And I see this again. With regard to the moral capital, if you're asking us to leave our families again, that we're in the red there. There is a trust gap between the college board and the teachers who are your most loyal foot soldiers and advocates. And here's my final question. Thank you for your patience. This isn't personal. I enjoy the company of everyone here. Trust goes 2 ways. There are hundreds of people who feel the same way a lot of us do who are clapping. Regardless of how many individuals on the dais feel that history is better served the way you've described it, won't you trust us? How many people in this room, what do we have to say to ask you to delay this redesign at least 5 years, if not more, until we see how this design that we currently have shakes out a little bit? We can't keep doing this. Thank you.
Great. We'll alternate. So, great. If you were next, go ahead.
Are you going to answer the question?
Oh, I didn't hear much of the question.
He did ask a question.
Could you repeat the sentence that includes your question?
There was a little bit of applause, which I'm not used to getting in my classroom. What do you have to hear from us tonight? We can raise hands if you want, for you to trust us in delaying this change 5 years or more until we see how the current revision of the revision of the revision shakes out, before asking us to sacrifice so much more moral capital for the College Board. Thank you.
So to answer the question, I would say that I disagree that the College Board or these changes demand a wholesale change in teaching practice. The exam design is not changing. I'll go to, so let me set some ground rules here. I will not continue a sentence if I'm interrupted. So you're welcome to interrupt me if you like, but I won't continue if that's the way we're going to behave tonight. I just won't. So I'm stopping there. We'll go to the next question. If you will engage with me in a professional way, I will do the same with you. We'll stop. Go ahead.
Yes, I 100% agree to be professional, but I 100% agree with you. I typically don't need a microphone, so this is unusual for me. I 100% colleagues that we do need to be professional in this whole evening. If not, it negates our argument. I also agree, sir, that you, before you make that statement, need to teach a year in my classroom and sacrifice a year I have with my family before you make that statement. And I did listen to everything that you said on the podium, and I respect everyone that's in this room, including the test development committee. I wrote out what I wanted to say, and I've heard nothing that will make me change what I want to say. But I want to make sure I was clear. Good evening. My name is Carol Giblin, and I teach in a large public high school in Texas. I would like to express a concern about the realignment of the course and my desire to include Periodization 3 as regular instruction for the AP World History scope. I am not going to address the issues of tens of thousands of dollars spent on textbook and ancillary materials, as wonderful teachers in this room, both real and virtual, know that the best teaching happens outside the textbook. I'm not going to address the issue of the 2-year course. I seriously applaud those schools who can and have already done this, but we all realize that many states, districts, and schools can't and won't be able to do this. Also, students are under so much pressure from STEM courses and academies that they will not have room in their schedule for what is essentially 2 world history courses. I'm not going to address the pure exhaustion that many of us feel from the years of changes to our course, and to the dream I keep re-experiencing that just 1 year ago in this very room, I heard someone say that, quote, after these changes to the writing rubrics, we'll be done with world history. My concern is professional and ethical. I've taught this course for 14 years, and one of my joys of this course is the true inclusiveness of this curriculum. I get to experience this every year at open house night, when I tell the assembled parents and students whose skin tones and cultures are markedly different from my own, that we get to learn about the richness and heritage of history of all times and parts of the world, not just what I learned in the 70s, which was Western Civ. Please don't let my Clairol 535 fool you. I'm way older than you think I am. The smiles and heartfelt thanks of teaching their history, their words, not mine, are all the validation I need to know that we, the world history teachers, are doing the right thing. To begin this course at $14.50, regardless of what colleges accept for credit, is to begin teaching the majority of the population's history in reflection of the West. To begin at a time that we have little choice but to address people's indifference, subjugation, rebellion, or revolution to and from the West is wrong. Even if we have flashback points to bring up previous history, it is still to explain how they got there and to negate the fullness of those times and those peoples when they were in power. It is to continue to reinforce the false narrative of history doesn't matter until the West shows up. It's to continue to reinforce what I perceive is the rise of anti-intellectualism and anti-the other in this country. It is what I was taught in the 70s, and it is wrong. It will always be wrong, and I, for one, refuse to continue that thought process. If we do not teach the richness of world history, how will students know that the richest man in the world on Forbes' annual list is a man from Africa? When my students went to see Black Panther, they came into my classroom and had an extensive, historically based discussion on what Wakanda might have really been. And they said, and this is a quote from them, as they sat and I let 30 minutes of precious time go by when they said, "For reals, Miss Gilman, for reals, it's Molly." How will they know about the majesties of the Americas and that, quote, yes, Virginia, there was a printing press before Gutenberg, and that the amazing place of advanced academics where Muslims and Christians and Jews came together to study, and that's the reason they have to take Algebra 2. How will they know about the most amazing Muslim traveler who inspired, I dare say, a significant portion of this room? And finally, how will they know about the mighty exception? Let that sink in. To negate the instruction of that and to relegate the perspective of this history to the time of reflection to the West, what the West has, is to perpetuate a falsehood and to lose an opportunity, which may be the only one we have for millions of students to get history right. And I could care less what they're given for credit in college. To be clear, my co-teacher, and I'm not really sure where she's sitting in this room, but she said I could say this. Hi. My co-teacher and I do plan on teaching world, bolded for accent, history, and to ensure that our students understand the wonderfulness that is a truly global perspective. To do otherwise would be to lower our professional standards as world historians, and we refuse to do so. And I cannot speak for her, but I will finish this by saying, I'm going to teach the right history. I'm not going to teach the white history.
So thank you for modeling effective civil discourse and thoughtful dialogue. I appreciate that and value that. I don't, as you can imagine, I don't agree that these changes prevent the sort of objectives that were so beautifully described in those remarks. This may be a principled disagreement among us, and I respect that. What I value and what the AP program stands for is giving students an opportunity to explore the beauties of what was just described. And I do not have confidence that happens when students are required to cover 6,000 years of history in 9 months. I see little to no evidence in the exam data or in conversations with students and teachers or in surveys of students and teachers, qualitative and quantitative, that students are able to have at scale the rich experience that was just described. I'm so grateful that you were able to achieve that. I trust that you are. I support the decisions you will make as to how you are going to shape your course moving forward. But I do not think the people in this room, and I want to be clear about this, are a representative sample of AP World History teachers or students nationwide.
And Mr. Packer, we need to work to correct that with those teachers, not to subjugate history further. And I could read you quotes from my students if I needed to, but I don't need to. I think we need to work with those teachers, not sacrifice history. And then I'm going to let other people speak.
I think it is a great misattribution of what is happening here to claim that these changes are a subjugation of history. I simply do not agree with that. What is better for students is the time to study the content with care and practice the historical thinking skills so that they're able to retain that content and use it in college and careers. That's what we stand for. Again, I recognize that you may value something different for students, that you may feel it's better for students to have in one course that vast sweep of history. I believe that some of you have accomplished amazing things through that approach, but I do not believe that that is what the AP program should be standing for. If you want to do that, you should do that, and you should do that without the AP program. You can use the AP exam for the parts that you would like to use it for, but you should think about other models. If you value a deep dive into the pre-European conquest narrative of period 4, I would encourage you to look at a pre-AP course instead, which focuses in depth on periods 1 through 3, is accessible to a broader range of students, and is much lower cost. I encourage you to think about models like the one you've described. If that works well for you, I think that's terrific. But the exam should focus on content that is appropriate for 1 year and 1 college course. But thanks for the dialogue. I made a mistake a minute ago, and I thought it was your turn next when it was hers, so I don't want to make that mistake again. Whose turn is next? Thank you.
All right, earlier and right now, you're repeating that periods 4, 5, and 6. And again, I'm not used to using a microphone. Can you hear me now? Fantastic. All right, earlier and again right now, you repeated that this course focusing on periods 4, 5, and 6 will not become a Eurocentric course. You will not allow it. The committee will not allow it to become a Eurocentric course. But the fact of the matter is that in time period 3, I can teach my students that there was a time in the world where Europe was not in charge. There was a time in the world when Europe was not the most powerful force on earth. There were others. There were Mongols, the Muslims, the caliphates. And so to teach only periods 4, 5, and 6 and try to stretch it to the 95% of the United States high school students that are not taking AP World History course, they will see start of time period 4, by the end of time period 4, Europe's on top. End of time period 5, Europe's on top. End of time period 6, Western civilization. And so while I do trust that your questions will not focus on Eurocentric or Western Civ, for the students who are taking this course, without that bit of context, that once upon a time, it wasn't just Europe. There were others who affected the entire world. We are taking a bit of context away from world history. And again, I'm not asking for 6,000 years, but can you give me 1,500?
Again, if the approach you would like to take with your AP World History course is to start with period 3. We support that fully. But that is not something that we will stand for. We believe within the AP program that students deserve not a rush, not a race. Rigorous should not be a race in AP as it has been for so many years. We believe that the topics are rich enough and the skills are essential enough that 2 years is needed. We will be a force for pushing towards 2 years. We know most schools will not do that, at least not initially. But we need to stand for what we believe is right, which is 2 full years for 6,000 or 10,000 years of world history. We do not think it makes sense to rush students through that material. That said, I think a lot of you may decide we are going to start our course with period 3 because our students are only going to have 1 year of world history, and we want to start it with period 3. That sounds great. Again, there's a concern.
Just let us keep time period 3. That's what I'm saying. Just a baby step. Just let us keep 3. Give us 4, 5, and 6, of course. 1 and 2 another time, but let us
I don't understand why you need that on the exam if the colleges aren't giving credit for that. Why does it matter? No? It doesn't, the logic doesn't hold up there.
I understand.
No, it doesn't.
But we think we're teaching history. We don't think we're teaching college. We think we're actually teaching history. We don't think we're teaching to whatever Florida State or UF considers
So
world
it
history.
shouldn't matter then if the exam focuses on periods 4 through 6, which is what the colleges give credit for. If you say we're not being driven by the exam, I say that's good. I think it's diminishing of all of us when I hear this sort of notion of being enslaved by, if the College Board doesn't put period 3 on the exam, suddenly that's going to be illegitimate in our schools. I don't believe that. I believe, again, you've heard me say what I think the best approach is, so I won't keep repeating that. But if your school doesn't have capacity for 2 years and you cannot move schools towards 2 years and feel like we want periods 3 through 6 in our course, I don't think it should be the end of the world that our exam is going to focus solely on the part for which colleges give credit. I don't understand what's such a big deal about that.
Okay, then give me a talking point for my administrator. Pargas, period 3 is not in the exam. Kids are complaining that you're trying to actually teach them something that's not in the exam. What do I tell my administrator?
I think you can simply indicate that you believe, as an AP World History, and that the College Board supports you, which is why they haven't asked you to resubmit your syllabus, that is important content for a 1-year World History program.
Can I quote you?
Say again?
Can I quote you on that? That you guys are saying this is an important piece of curriculum?
I'd be happy to collaborate with you on a talking point around that.
I'll take that.
Rick, you had a comment on this?
All right, so I'm not speaking for the Test Development Committee. I'm not speaking for College Board. I'm speaking for Rick Warner, who has spent the last couple of weeks talking to well over 200 of you about these issues, and I really appreciate the way that people have shared their feelings with me. Don't clap at this, but I actually do think that it would be better to keep period 3. But I don't think that we can. But I do think it would be better. So I'm just rose because I wanted to tell you that for 20 years, I've taught world history up to 1500 and since 1500 in the college. And I have many students who don't take the first part of the course. And I have to tell you that you could ask any of my colleagues if I'm Eurocentric, and they're probably going to say just the opposite. He hates Europe or something, right? This can be done, but it's very much like swimming upstream. I don't minimize that. It's very much like swimming upstream. You have to pick apart at that Western narrative that people come in with. You need to give the background. You need to, go wide. It can be done. It can absolutely be done. My European colleague says that because of me, she thinks that world history is the new hegemony. She says that cynically. I do think that within this construct we can do it. But if I were a high school teacher, I would spend time on a big chunk of period 3. And anyway, thank you again for sharing your feelings with me.
Good evening. My name is Dan Moses. I teach in Arlington, Virginia, formerly Chicago Public Schools, and after that, DC Public Schools. And Rick, I appreciate what you said, and you and I have exchanged emails, and I appreciate what you said on Facebook. Context matters, and it's a key element of both of your essay rubrics. And 600 to 1450 is a context that our kids deserve. It's a time when Black and brown people thrived without European intervention. And my students many of whom are black and brown, deserve to be taught an era of history in which their people were thriving and not being conquered. It is a key element of history, and it deserves to be taught, it deserves to be tested. Tang and Song, the Mongols, Mansa Musa, it deserves to be taught. Our kids deserve to learn and not just be told what Florida and Texas wants them to learn. Thank you.
I just say I agree. There's no question, I think, in anyone's mind at the College Board that periods 1 through 3 deserve the same focus as periods 4 through 6. I think where we disagree is we simply do not believe they get adequate time, space, or attention. And we can see in the data, you know, the last time there was an Asian short answer question on the world history exam, 62% of students earned 0 points on it. They're not learning the non-European material in periods 1 through 3. We see it consistently. We see the pattern consistently. Students are not learning the material.
Which question are you referring to?
Question 1 on the 2017 operational form.
That was the first year of that question.
We can play that game if you want, but the pattern is consistent.
That's fuzzy data, Trevor. That's not real data.
The pattern is consistent. Students are not learning the material. We value the material as well. We believe that students need a full year for periods 1 through 3 and need a full year for periods 4 through 6. We will help and advocate for that to become possible. As I've said, I think many schools will not shift to that, in which case we support you fully in including period 3 in your course if that's what you think is right for 1 year of world history. But that's different from what we will measure on the exam, which will focus on the parallel college course. But again, if the ultimate issue is, similar to what you asked, will the College Board be willing to say that in a 1 year world history program, even though it's not part of what is given college credit, we support teachers in including period 3 because it's important context in a 1 year course. And if you're not going to do a 2 year course, which is what we would strongly prefer, even if you didn't offer pre-AP, that matters little to me. What matters is the time and space for students to learn this material instead of the current race that feels so destructive in many cases.
Can I respond? I concur. And if you want to take period 1 and period 2, I think the vast majority of the teachers in this room would concur with you. Period 3 needs to stay. It needs to stay. And you cited data at the beginning of this. I'm not sure where you collected your data about dissatisfaction with the course. I don't know where you collected, but I just want to say, if you pool us, your soldiers, if you pool us, the ones who go out and work with your kids, they'll tell you we want period 3. They will say that. I guarantee it.
I'm sure you're right. The survey is I've seen questions about that, so just to answer that question, or the implied question, the surveys are done annually. Every year, AP students in every subject and every teachers in every subject are surveyed. The survey methodology rotates teachers in and out so that we don't get survey fatigue, but the design of the survey generates a nationally representative data set. So that's where the survey data comes from, just as an FYI on that. Not disagreeing with your larger point, just wanting to make sure that you know what that was about. I do agree as well that if we were to poll those of you that are on the inner circle of AP World History, I do think there is a stronger allegiance to the current model of world history among you, the inner circle, than among the population at large, right? You are people who have found ways to make this work. You're AP readers, in many cases you're workshop presenters. You have cracked the code. Most AP teachers have not. The dissatisfaction level is very high, 79%. So were you next? Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Rob Halleck. I teach at Sammamish High School in the Bellevue School District. And my question is about the relationship between the pre-AP world class and the AP Human Geography. So 7 years ago, we at Sammamish decided to really push AP Human Geography as our 9th grade class to prepare our students. And I know we're not alone across the country in doing that. Many schools have a AP Human Geography, 9th grade, 10th grade AP World History sequence. So can you speak to, so this is kind of, I view it as confusing. I view it as potentially 2 classes competing against each other. I'm not sure what kind of relationship the College Board sees between those classes.
Yeah, that's a great question. We want schools to have options. Currently, 3% of 9th graders take AP Human Geography. So it's tiny. That's great for schools that want to offer AP Human Geography in 9th grade and see it as sort of an on-ramp to a challenging social studies program. More power to them. That's of course fine by us. It's the only AP course, AP Human Geography, where the majority of AP students are 9th graders. So that's fine, but it's a really small subset of the 9th grade population. So many other states have world history as the 9th grade, as a typical 9th grade course. They're not using AP in that 9th grade. Some are, but most are not. So it's just one more option for schools. For schools that aren't going to put AP Human Geography in 9th grade, but do keep world history in 9th grade, and aren't going to do AP World History in 9th grade, we want them to do a really strong foundation in periods 1 through 3 in that 9th grade year for the majority of students. This is why it rankles me, just to say it a little bit, when the accusations become that somehow the College Board is opposed to the teaching of world history prior to European conquest and some of the terrible things that happen in periods 4 through 6. No, what we really want is a program that is much more scalable across grade 9 that will anchor students in a much stronger foundation in periods 1 through 3, which is exactly why we've created pre-AP, knowing that it will reduce our revenues because it will pull volume away from the higher margin generating AP courses. But we're a nonprofit. Never once has anyone on my board of trustees said, Trevor, we need you to earn more money for the AP program, or we need you to get more students to test. I'm an English major, a former English major. I would be like the worst person to run AP if our board of trustees cared about any sort of business objective. I've never once heard them ask about that. So, but that's the difference. We just want schools to have options, and we think pre-AP World History is probably a much better option for most kids than 9th grade AP Human Geography, but if Human Geography works for you, more power to you. In the same way that if the current covering all 6 periods in AP World History works for you, more power to you. You can keep doing it that way, even though that's not what we'll focus the test on. Who was next? I said I'd pause. I think I know the answer to this question, given the lineup. But I said I would pause, and I just want to keep my word on that. I said I'd ask by show of hands, how many of you would prefer to go back to this topic? Show your hands if you prefer to go back to this agenda. Okay, 4 brave people raised their hands. Clearly, we're going to stick with the discussion topic. Who was next? I'm so eager for the guy in the bathroom. I mean, what's coming there? But who's next? Who was it? You were. Thank you.
My name is Laura LaChapelle, and I teach in Jackson, Georgia, at a rural fringe Title I school. As such, I'm a small school, so I teach both AP World and APUSH for the last several years, which means I consider myself a survivor because I've lived through all of the recent iterations of the APUSH redesigns, and I said redesigns, multiple. And to be perfectly blunt, with all due respect, they were a fiasco. And here's why. Not only were they multiple, even within a school year, but repeatedly, we were getting emails with, hey, APUSH teachers, here's new resources for you to use for period 3, when the vast majority of us were starting period 5. It was a nightmare to try to plan, to try to be prepared, to try to give our best to students, when the resources that we were being provided were being given to us far too late. And by the time we'd say, well, okay, I'll use that next year, I suppose, and tuck it away, by the time next year rolled around, everything had changed. So my question is this. You've said repeatedly, Mr. Packer, that if this stays the same, and that's what we're hearing throughout this evening, that it will be periods 4 through 6, and that it will not change in terms of key concepts, that the depth will not change. I want to see proof in terms of sample exams, lesson ideas, sample writing prompts, and I need to see them this school year. Not next August 1st, because I'm already in school by August 1st of 2019. I need to see them by this September, October, November, December, so that I have this school year to plan appropriately for those changes, so that I can talk to my counselors and my administrators about how to appropriately plan our curriculum and our courses prior to our spring registration, which starts in January. I need to see that way before some of those things have been rolled out. When will we see examples?
So again, I don't think it's an accurate characterization of this change to compare it to the redesign of AP World History in the past or the redesign of AP US History, because the exam design is not changing. You won't see different task types, you won't see different rubrics. The current exams that you have, any question focused on periods 4 through 6 remains viable. So this isn't, I want to-
Depth. I want to see an example of.
But we're not deepening or rewriting the framework. You're not going to see more levels of detail about what should be covered in periods 4 through 6. It remains the same. There is one exception, which is from period 3, the committee has proposed, and we think this is the right decision, moving in a sort of prerequisite set of topics on the rise of world religions. Since there's so much about the spread of religions in period 4, the committee felt strongly, and I think they were right, that we do need to add to the start of the course, in addition to rather than just cutting it down the middle and saying it starts with period 4 now, they have added a new sort of prerequisite set of topics around the rise of the world religions.
So if I could follow up.
But other than that, there aren't edits to the key concepts remain the same, the enduring understandings remain the same. In illustrative examples, the committee has proposed fleshing out those illustrative examples on the side to make sure there are many non-European examples to resist that sort of
Okay, and that's a change. Fleshing out the illustrative examples, that's adding more, and those are things that could potentially show up. We want to see that in advance. We need that plenty early. We need to plan. We can't do this on the fly and be our best. So if you're taking just half the course and telling us to teach it in a full year, while we'd love to say, in a rainbows and unicorns kind of world, woohoo, I could do all these cool projects and in-depth coverage, our concern is, what is the test going to look like in terms of depth? And we need to see proof. There's a trust factor there that has been mentioned this evening. Thank you.
So we'll look, and fair point, thanks. Again, to reiterate though, it will look like AP exams look today as any of the questions, and as I've looked at them, I've been surprised even in looking at the past few years of exams questions, the preponderance of them are 1450 to the present anyway in the free response section. So that will not look different. They will look the same. Fair points, though, thank you. Who was next? Still not the bathrobe guy?
No, there's a woman that wants to speak first.
You were there first. I think that's right.
So no, honestly, I want to speak to one of the points that you keep making. That you keep saying that what College Board does shouldn't affect teachers. But you guys are the ones in power. You are the authority on our curriculum because it's on the test. And because the schools want to teach what's on the test, because the kids want to learn what's on the test, and the parents want their kids to learn what's going to be on the test. You cannot tell my black and brown students that their history is not going to be tested, and then assume that that's not going to matter. Right? The people in power in our country already are telling those same students that their history, that their present, that their future doesn't matter. And by you making this decision, you are going along with that. And I think you have to understand your role in that authority, in that curriculum. Because even if we all say, yeah, sure, we'll teach Islam, we'll teach period 3, it's not on the test. What happens in 10 years when maybe many of us are not in the classroom anymore because we're not being paid enough anyways? The next group of teachers are not going to do that because they didn't do it before. Like my first year of teaching was in AP World. And I didn't even learn half that history as a woman of color. I did not know those things. And I was given the opportunity to learn them through AP World, through teaching that. And if I didn't get that opportunity, I would not have learned that, because that's not what my teachers taught me. And if you take this out of the course, period 3, and I'm going to bring this right up to you. There's about 900 teachers that have taken this survey, 90% of whom agree that period 3 is so important to understanding the context of not only periods 4 to 6, but showing our black and brown and our native students that their histories matter. Their histories don't start at slavery. Their histories don't start at colonization. And I just think that you're just another my students that they don't matter. And you need to take responsibility for that. If that's the decision you're going to make, you need to take responsibility for that.
I think you need to take responsibility for assigning me a position that is not accurate and not valid.
Well, then let me ask you this.
My position is not that period 3 is unimportant, and I've said that repeatedly. I think it is so important that it should not be rushed over.
But your actions are not showing that. And I would love to know how many black and brown teachers or professionals are on the board making those decisions. Because I don't even see that many around this room. I mean, come on. You know, it's like our voices are being stifled every step of the way. And you can tell me all day that period 3 matters, and you can tell me all day that you believe that we should teach those things, but if it's not on the test, people are going to stop teaching them.
So why don't you, if those are so important, let me put this back on you. Why don't you switch and teach periods 1 through 3 instead of periods 4 through 6?
Because my school cannot afford it, because you're charging them to do that.
It's a tenth of the price.
You're charging, it doesn't matter. You are charging, the state might subsidize the test. They are not going to subsidize your pre-AP world class, and our schools are not going to teach that. They don't have the money for pencils, dude. How are they going to teach that class? I just think that point needs to be made. And like, I'm sorry, you are the voice of this, and you can tell us as much as you want that you were not part of that decision, but you're standing here, and you have to take responsibility for that. If that's the decision you're going to make, then we have to go and tell our students that their histories don't matter.
So I'm shocked that you would say that I'm blaming this decision on someone else. I think I've stood here all night and said that I own this decision, which I do. So play fair here. I have owned this decision.
Let me calm down.
I have owned this decision all night. This is a decision that I made, and I stand for giving students the time and space to study something like period 3 with great care.
Okay, but
and how dare you claim that I do not care about that? The decision we have made, let me repeat this, is to reduce our revenues to create more space and time for students to study periods 1 through 3 because we care about them.
Look, I'm sorry, it's just, your decisions are going to have an effect on our students and our schools. And for you to put that on me like I was making that decision, that's not fair. I'm the one that's teaching, I'm the one that's standing in front of my students who are told every single day that they do not matter. Every single day they walk out of the classroom, and that's what they're told. And this decision, they're in outrage. This is where they learn these histories. And so maybe it's not you to be mad at, you're the face of it right now, but I just can't believe that as a college board you can't take any sort of, you're not taking this feedback. Like, we're telling you, and I'm about to hand you the survey data. It's like, what do you need from us? Because these voices are being stifled and will continue to be stifled. And I don't have, looking ahead 10 years, these kids are voting. Like, how are we supposed to stop like Islamophobia if we can't teach Islam because it's on a test?
So it sounds like we need to agree to disagree.
No, I'm not agreeing to disagree on this. Sorry. You can not be okay with my decision, but I will not agree to disagree. I will keep fighting for this, just so you know. You'll keep hearing me on Twitter and Facebook.
Please.
Good evening. I'll keep it brief. First of all, I'm not up here to criticize anyone. I'm certainly not Mr. Packer, and first I would actually like to thank you. I know you're a very important, busy man like myself, so thank you very much for being here this evening. I do appreciate it. I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience because I also think that your lives are important. And you probably have places to be like me. I'm gonna have to keep this brief. I am, as I'm sure you all know, Mr. Fat and Happy. That's my name. I come from a state that, like you've mentioned, I'd like to just mirror a few things, does not require periods 1 through 3. It's not in our curriculum. I've taught several world history classes. We started 1415, and I, for one, am very glad that now the AP course will mirror that, because I again, am a very important and busy man, and I don't have time to teach anything before 1450. And so, I raise my glass to you and I say thank you, sir. You've made my job so much easier. And I think like most Americans, particularly in this current administration, again, are just going to be very pleased that we can begin with 1450 when, I'll go ahead and say it, the Europeans were in charge. It feels right. It feels good. It does. Oh, what was that? My colleague in the back, sir? Thank you. Thank you. So again, I'm not here to criticize, and again, I do understand that you're a very important man. And so I appreciate that you were here this evening. And again, I want to give you the full kudos for enabling me to teach white America. Thank you.
Okay, so it is past 8 o'clock. I will be in the reception. I'm happy to hear the comments that we haven't had time for here in the group. I think I just need to close by underscoring where I think I disagree with many of you. Many of you feel the students are better served by a course that covers more content within the academic year. I respect that position, and I disagree with that position. I believe that students are better served by much more time for periods 1 through 3, much more time for period 4 through 6, and I have made the choice, not the committee, I have made the choice that what AP will stand for is historical coursework that allows teachers and students much more time to focus on the content in depth and to help students practice and develop the historical thinking skills. That's the decision I've made, and I understand that you would prefer that some of you would prefer that not be the decision. So let's close there. I'll be happy to come straight to you and hear your comment, but I need to be respectful of the time that was set for this, the facilities arrangements we've made, and so on. So I'll come right to you now. Thanks for your time.